Okay, educators, what I'm wondering today is if you're thinking that maybe back in your office or back at your school, you may have a functional behavior assessment or a behavior plan that isn't working. Would any of you agree? And the reason for this is that we have typically used our traditional or conventional ways of thinking as to how we work with kids. And that is that we typically attribute their challenging behavior to trying to get something or avoid something. And when we do this, then that leads to another conventional approach. And that is, let's either reinforce the behavior that we want to see increased, or let's punish or consequence the behaviors that we want to decrease. And this is all based on the belief that behavior is a function of its consequences. But here's what we know. Those kids that have toxic stress, many adverse childhood experiences, and trauma, these type of behavior plans and functional behavior assessments don't work for those kids, because those kids need a different approach. An approach where we remove power and control. We remove consequences, and oftentimes we remove rewards as well. And so the things that we need to be assessing, rather than what they're trying to get or what they're trying to avoid, which I believe is just too simplified an approach, we need to be assessing the neurocognitive thinking skills that they lack.
So for students who have trauma impacts, the thing that we need to ensure that we're doing is we need to be assessing and intervening in ways that are compatible with what the brain needs and what the central nervous system needs. So as an example, in our functional behavior assessments, rather than assessing around the behavior itself, we need to be looking at things like their level of regulation and the skills that may be underdeveloped as a result of the trauma that they've gone through. And then when we look at our behavior plans, we want to make sure that we are looking proactively at every aspect of that plan. So we want a proactive regulation plan, a plan that looks ahead of the incident and looks at how can we help this child become regulated when they get to school, stay regulated while they're at school, and re-regulate when they become dysregulated. We also want to have components that look at how are we helping them to manage the activation of trauma that they feel in their body and be able to discharge that trauma in appropriate ways. And finally, we want to make sure that we're building goals around skills. The underdeveloped skills that have been impacted by their trauma, we want to make sure that those skills are the focus of our goals. That when we write a goal, we're looking at the growth of the skill rather than looking at behavior.